All righty. Well, so first of all, let me just say thank you for allowing me to come in and share the space with you guys. My name is Lourin Hubbard, and I am running for Congress in California's 21st Congressional District, which is right here in Fresno. The incumbent for that office is a fellow Democrat by the name of Jim Costa. And no disrespect to Jim, I think he has been a representative of his time, and we live in a different time now. And so, just to give you some background about myself, I have ran for Congress before. I made it through in a special election to replace Devin Nunes. It was the Democratic nominee going into that election, which was really surprising because, as other folks will tell you, Democrats in this area can't run on a progressive platform and win. But with no name ID, just a principle of single payer healthcare, universal child care, was able to make it into a primary in a special election. And so those are the things that I continue to champion. Just a little bit about myself now and my work career. I started out after graduation from Fresno State in political science and public admin with the Department of Social Services for Fresno County. And from that experience, I got to see all of the impact that these programs like CalFresh and Medi-Cal have on families. Right? Those were programs that I used growing up to get to Fresno State, to get my education. Right? I'm a person that has $38,000 in student loans. And I think that, you know, those are experiences that kind of shape my perspective. And I think with my current job as a union organizer, I think it's time we have a working class agenda that's in Washington, D.C. I have been an activist in this area for a very long time. And at a certain point, it clicked in my head that I'm really tired of being in the streets and marching and going to these people who are the policy makers to correct the policy that got us in the situation that we're in. And instead of trying to do all my darndest to get their attention, we're just going to replace them. And so that's why I'm running for Congress now, is to make sure that working class people have a seat at the table and that we have a working class agenda in Washington, D.C. So I'm happy to take any questions. If you have any questions that come up afterwards, you can find out more information about myself and my campaign on lourinforcongress.com. Website is officially up now. Lourin, that's Lourin, for Congress, CONGRESS.com. Thanks for the test, Kate, because if I had misspelled for or Congress, they'd probably be like, hey, this guy's got to go.
All right, questions in person or online?
I see James online. And Elizabeth. Well, we can't see Elizabeth, but I know she's there. But I haven't seen James in a long time. And then I will be with Adriana at her fundraiser on Friday. So cheers up to that.
Okay, well, I have a question.
Certainly.
Will you be taking APAC?
I do not take any APAC money. I take any corporate PAC money at all.
Okay.
So my belief is if you show me who's paying you, I'll show you who you work for. And so as a person who doesn't come from money, doesn't come from that side, and again, running on a working class agenda, my focus is working for working people. And so, no, I don't take any corporate PAC money. I don't take any APAC money, as opposed to my opponent who's running in this race. I also have been on the forefront of having a two-state solution in Palestine for a long time. I think it's clear that criticism of Israel is not anti-Semitism, which is what we get accused of for saying, hey, we want a country that's taking billions of dollars from us that has universal health care, by the way. Maybe we don't want them to bomb children and bomb innocent people. That doesn't make you anti-Semitic, right? But I appreciate that question.
James has a question. Would you like me to read it or would you like to say it?
Okay, I'll read it for you. So James says, do you take law enforcement money?
That's a great question. I have not. I have not. I probably would not seek that endorsement to get that money. If an individual person happens to be a police officer and they donate to my campaign, sure, I guess. But as far as some of the other I don't know, groups, law enforcement groups and things like that. Yeah. Yeah. No.
So the reason why James asked that question, because it's an unofficial litmus test for this club, we're working to actually make it official, that we don't endorse candidates that do take law enforcement money, with the exception of individual officers, which is kind of funny that you laid that out exactly.
Well, now you've told everyone.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Right. Well, I mean, so like part of my background, right, is union and labor, and I think that, for better or worse, unions can be, particularly police unions, can be problematic, to say the least. But they're also different than service employees like the ones that I represent, right? And so, to put it as James eloquently said, no.
So how do you feel about universal childcare?
Universal childcare is one of my platforms. One of the things that I think is actually a realistic goal for us to do. Just my background, I have 3 children. I have a 9-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 6-month-old. And so I have been in that situation of trying to figure out how we're going to go to work full time, but also have someone to watch our children. And to the tune of $18,000 is what it cost for my last child to go to daycare. It was $18,000 for the year in daycare money. I don't know how many like working people can do that, right? None, exactly. And so I think it's a realistic plan. I think especially when we look at some, how do I want to say, revenue enhancements. Just a great example that I had a little rant about this morning on social media was the fact that we just went through this government shutdown, right? And people were so upset that 42 million Americans were on food stamps. And you look at a corporation like Walmart, who has 14,500 of their employees on SNAP benefits, and yet made $21 billion in profit. And they also get an estimated $7.8 billion in tax subsidies a year from federal and state governments. We can 7.8 billion a year gets us halfway there for universal child care.
Not to mention the people that use SNAP shop at Walmart to get their food.
Exactly. So there's definitely things to cut. My whole focus and my aim, and the reason why I think we need to have progressive and working class voices running, is every time we want to do something for working class people, it's always met with, well, how much is that going to cost? And yet we have ICE, who's running around with a $170 billion budget. The total defense budget of the country of Canada is $62 billion. They have $170 billion running around ragged, snatching people off the street, and not a single person asked, how are we paying for this? So anytime I'm met with that question, that's my whole focus is we have ways to pay for things, right? We can have universal health coverage. We can have universal pre-K and kindergarten and childcare. It's just a question of priorities. And we need to put people in office who share our priorities. Mr. Rico.
Wait, here.
Oh.
So this club knows how much I hate PG&E and our high electricity prices, but it's actually become more aware to me within the past few months that electric utility prices are actually an issue across the country, and
Yes.
especially with all these AI data centers and stuff like that. Do you have any ideas on a national level, even how we can bring some of those utility prices down?
I think one of the ways that I think that we can do it, specifically what I've looked at here in Fresno, is having a municipal system, one that's a public system that people have. There's accountability there, right? So just like the I think of it as a credit union, right? Where a credit union is different than a bank who has shareholders and profiteers. As a credit union, you're a member. We share in those profits. There's a ways for us to do that locally and get some of that control and accountability. As far as exploring, controlling things nationwide, I have not, to be honest with you, I haven't looked at. Um, that would be a good question. I know it would be tough in places like Texas who don't want to spend money. They'd rather let their citizens freeze to death instead of putting adequate money into it. So.
Rolling blackout, so the citizens there are going to be in a different mindset. So the citizens are going to be in a different mindset because the winters that we've been through now have snow.
Yeah.
I've been in Texas for the last 10 years.
Oh,
So
nice.
so we're now
Welcome to the
experiencing
great state.
snow, which is a climate change that is a new introduction. So instead of happening every 10 years, it's literally happening every year for about 2 weeks. And we're just shutting down and we're going through rolling blackouts because we don't have enough electricity to give everyone heat. And
Right.
so I don't think the mindset that you're expecting is going to be the same because a lot has shifted in the last 5 years there.
Yeah, and I would be pleasantly happy to work across the aisle, as they say, with those folks that are willing to do something about that. It has just really been my experience that when we talk about bipartisanship and things actually getting done, we have one party who just has zero, even if it would help every single person in their districts or their state. If Trump doesn't say it's good, then it's not good. And so that would be my only issue with that. And, but I also think that we get to do incremental steps, right? Especially from a person here representing this area. Doing the municipal system is something that I've actually researched on. And I think it's feasible to get federal funding to do an exploration of how we do this, and then take that model and then apply it, blanket nationally. But I have not thought about that to this degree.
But yes, mindsets definitely are changing across the country.
I would hope so. Yeah, especially because like how many people froze to death in Texas because of that? Yeah.
So it's like one of the things that's changed though in terms of the infrastructure of our country is these data centers for AI, these GPUs instead of CPUs. That's not going away, but it's not just the electricity they use on computing power. It's literally trying to keep these rooms down to like 60-40 degrees.
Yes.
And that's year round.
Yes.
And so I haven't really researched it that deeply either, but like maybe if we tax, for right now we're in electrical brackets on my PG&E plan, so I'm allotted this much at this price. Once I use that, boom, the price gets higher for the next quote. Then after that goes higher. So it's a tiered system, but if we can do that with taxes rather than price and offset the rest of us,
well,
maybe
and also
something like that,
like
an actual progressive tax
and
system.
have, if they're using this much energy, then instead of spreading that cost to everyone that's on that grid, on that system, right, that increases rates for everybody else, then why don't they pay for their billion-dollar entities, right? So I'm not opposed to having them pay their fair share and stuff. But also with these data centers, the other thing is, I was a manager at the Regional Water Quality Control Board, which is a mouthful to say. But one of the other things about these data centers is the environmental impact to water quality that isn't being talked about. Yes, they're taking all this energy, but also the impact to the environment as well. That's not being accounted for. They're not paying anything for, that I think they should be held accountable to as well. And that's like, yeah.
So, as a non binary person, what is your stance on potentially enshrining trans and non binary healthcare protections in the state constitution for both adults and children?
To be really honest with you, it's an easy yes for me to work on. I have had the pleasure now to actually go to a couple of trans emotion children alchemy events, and we're doing Thanksgiving next week. Next week, so be on the lookout. I'll be making turkey. But I think the demonization of these folks is really just been the scapegoat, right? It is not trans people is the reason why you can't afford health care. It's not immigrants the reason why you can't buy a house. Nobody's talking about the private equity that's buying all these single family homes, which is a real problem. But to your point, in protecting people and giving people protections, there's a lot of folks that think, oh, but the 14th Amendment that blankets everybody, and it really does not. And so enshrining protections to stay as a country to say that we stand with these people is something very easy for me to do. But also, I think it's very easy for me to find partners in every level of government to do that. Adriana also feels the same, so we can also work on it at many different levels. And I think that's part of the thing that we're seeing now is that we have these issues that are happening all around, and only one area of government is working on it or has concern about it, and there's not a partnership across all levels. And that's something that I think needs to change. And so, if this is a big enough ball that everybody should be rolling it up the hill, right, for the next person.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a prepared question. He has no idea I'm going to ask him this. As a future U.S. Congressman, you will have influence over the U.S. federal tax code. You will be able to vote on the tax code. Given the rapidly widening economic inequality among all Americans, not just Americans, but globally, what is your stance on tax reformation aimed at the top percentages of both individual and corporate earners?
That's a great question, Kate. Thanks for asking that. First of all, I think the tax code is really too complicated. First, for regular people to understand, not enough people understand the difference between an effective tax rate and a marginal tax rate, and so simplifying it, I think, is a key. But also, we've seen in the last two Trump presidencies now, where he gets his HR1, the big beautiful bill, which now after these Epstein files has a whole different meaning. Is that the system is, when people think about I don't want to do this because the system's rigged. Those bills show you that it is, right? The poorest in this, after this HR1 bill went through, the poorest Americans have a tax increase. They're paying more, while the largest income, well, I won't even say income earners, while the largest, the most wealthiest have a tax decrease. We know throughout the history of America that when we were actually great, right, the time they all want to go back to, make America great again, is the reverse of that, when the wealthiest paid a fair share into the system. And so I'm happy to work on that and flip that, because I think that's part of what's going to get us into a more equal and fair tax system. You're welcome.
Besides the things that you've mentioned. Besides the things that we've mentioned here already, what are there any other goals that you want to see happen for your district?
So the real big thing that I've been working on is going through this. I have a degree in political science. I understand how government works. One representative out of 435 as far as passing legislation and getting it done that way. But I also think when we see problems that there's a whole lot that we can do about it. When the government was doing during the shutdown, we found out, all this is happening. SNAP is not going to be able to send out food stamps for folks during the holidays. Within 3 days, 4 days, we organized a food drive, and we donated almost 1,000 pounds of food in 3 days. We went to 2. So that, as opposed to what our current representative did, was to have a press conference and tell everyone it's going to be bad. Like, we know that. But there's things that we can do outside of our offices to actually be more proactive in making and affecting change. And so that is one of the things that I would bring to this office that currently isn't there. Is actually, hey, there's people that are hungry, let's feed them, right? But not only that, but again with the trans issue, it says a lot when the highest federal office in the land actually speaks up about issues and actually shows their face at events and brings that coverage and brings that awareness. It literally costs our representative nothing to do that, but so that's where my mind is yes, there's things that are votes that are going to happen, and sponsor bills and get bills passed, but on the other side of that is making sure that constituents are served and how are different ways that we can actually get service to these folks. Oh, am I out of frame? No. Okay.
I have just a quick question, actually.
Certainly.
Have you looked at the new districts, and will it affect your race at all, considering with the...
So I have looked at the new district. I've spent the last 2.5 months running phone banks and canvassing to get Prop 50 passed. So I'm really happy it passed, because now I actually now live in the district with the new boundary lines, where I did not before. Okay. So now I'm actually in the district, and we've filed our paperwork to run. And so when it comes to the electoral side of my brain and actually running for office and where registrations are and things like that, the district doesn't change that much. It's still a plus 13 Democratic district. So the hope is that a Democrat will still be the representative, right? But also what we've seen, as it being a plus 13 Democratic district, our representative has only won his last election by 4 points. Tells you a lot. And I think right now the Democratic Party as a whole has to do a whole bunch of soul searching, because the things that I thought this party stood for and why I am a member of it haven't been highlighted in our elected officials. And so that is part of the reason why I'm running as well, is to show folks, hey, this is what actual Democrats stand for. And that's why we're doing that.
Any other questions? Any questions online?
Going once.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much for coming. Like, we really appreciate it.